I got about 15 minutes. I'm going to cover as much as I can. This is Algebra 3, Lesson 6. Your first test will take place after Lesson 8. You guys have your review. The review will be due the day before we take the test. You can ask me when this is all over what day that will probably be. All right, Lesson 6. This is fractional equations, radical equations, systems of three linear equations. Now, on the systems of three linear equations side of things, how many of you recall matrices from last year? Okay. Hopefully about everybody. That will help us kind of speed through that last portion. Some of the questions that you see, like in questions 6, 7, and 8, can you see how we might solve that using a matrix? Right? We're going to use a 3 by 4 matrix on at least 6 and 7. What you'd want to be careful with number 8 is notice that the first row doesn't have a Z, the second row doesn't have an X, and the third row doesn't have a Y. What am I going to put in for elements that don't exist there? 0. We need to make sure that we put in zeros in our matrices for those placements, okay, for those elements. Does that make sense? All right, so be careful with that. It's not a 3 by 3, right? It's a 3 by 4 with missing elements. All right, let's come back up to question number 1, though. The book has a really, really complicated way of solving this question. And I've got that really complicated way written out and recorded. But what I want to show you is, I don't know if this is just my own way of solving it, but I think it does involve some common sense. And anytime where we can use common sense to help us solve a math problem, that should help us. So naturally, as you look at this, we see 1/4 plus 2 over x plus 1 equals 1/2. And our natural inclination would be to go ahead and find a common denominator between 4 and x plus 1, right? Okay. We can actually solve this a little bit simpler because we already know what the solution is, right? Okay. So effectively, we know that 1/4 plus something equals 1/2, right? Yes? Okay. Well, so we could do this if we wanted to. If we wanted to know what plus 1/4 equals 1/2, we could subtract 1/4 from 1/2, right? All right, you'd subtract 1/4, subtract 1/4, and over here, right, I'd get a common denominator, right? I'd get 2/4 minus 1/4, and I'd see that 1/4, x equals 1/4, correct? Okay, you with me so far? Okay, so if x equals 1/4, okay, so what we learn is that 1/4 is equal to 2 over x plus 1. Okay, this 1/4 plus this equals 1/2. So 1/4 equals 2 over x plus 1. Are you following me yet? Okay, now I can solve for x. Okay, now there's a couple of different things that I could do visually. I mean, I can, if I've got 1 to 2, then basically what I would want to do is I'm going to, I could multiply both parts. 2 would equal 2, which means x plus 1 would have to equal 8, right? Okay. If x plus 1 equals 8, subtract 1, what does x equal? 7. All right, but if you want to, you could cross multiply and divide. Okay, 1 times x plus 1 is x plus 1. 2 times 4 is 8. 8 equals x plus 1. Subtract 1, x equals 7. Okay, does that make sense to you? If it doesn't, tell me and I'll take a big step back and I'll go through it again, maybe a little bit slower. Okay, I know my work is kind of all over the map. Okay, if you need help. Okay, let me just kind of refresh here. All we're saying is that we know we have a for sure fraction. We know we're adding something to it and we're getting a for sure fraction. We want to find out what this whole fraction actually equals. Once we've got that, we can set our unknown equal to our known. Okay, and then solve for the missing parts. Questions, comments, concerns? Okay, well, let's look at number 2 then. Okay, you guys feel like you guys got a handle on number 1. Tell me how to solve number 2. I have 2/3 plus this complicated fraction of 1 over x plus 2, and I know it equals 1/2. Okay? What's next? Okay, so subtract 2/3 from each side is what I heard. Is that what you're sticking with? Okay, subtract 2/3 from each side. So what I'm getting is 1/2 minus 2/3, right? Okay, what do I need now? Okay, what's the common denominator? 6. So I'm multiplying this by 3 over 3, and this by 2 over 2. I'm getting 3/6 minus what? 4/6, and I'm getting what? Negative 1/6, right? Okay, what is equal to negative 1/6? 1 over x plus 1 is equal to negative 1/6, right? Okay. All right, what's next? Cross multiply. So 6 times 1 is 6, and x plus 1 times negative 1. Negative x minus 1. What's next? Add 1. So 7 equals negative x. Divide by negative 1. X equals negative 7. And what's nice about this is that I can test that, right? So negative 7 plus 1 is what? Negative 6, right? 2 divided by negative 6, negative 1/3, right? Okay? Right, and you can put that together and see, is that 1/2? All right, 1/4 minus 1/3. Okay, is that the same as 2/3? Okay, yeah, I'm sorry, I was mixing 1 and 2 up. Okay, but we should be able to plug it back in and get our solution. All right, now on to bigger and better things. Something new here, we're going to work with radical equations. Okay, radical is probably one of my favorite mathematical terms because it makes math sound cool. It's radical. Okay. Let's see. You want to pay close attention to some of the things that we're going to do here. Okay, because these are steps that are usually messed up. Does everybody have this page? I'm going to go ahead and flip over to somewhere that's going to give me a little bit more room to work. Okay. So we have the square root. This is what, question number 3. Okay, in case you're watching a video and you want to get there. All right, we've got radical 4x minus 4 minus square root of 9 equals 3. Okay, the first thing I want to do is I want to isolate the radical that has my variable. Okay? So this right here, the radical 4x minus 4 is the radical with the variable. I'm going to move everything else over to the other side. How do I move negative radical 9? Add it, right? Add radical 9. All right, so I have square root of 4x minus 4 equals 3 plus radical 9. But do I know what radical 9 is? 3. So what's 3 plus 3? So I got 6. Okay, so there's 6 there. Okay, now I've got a radical on one side, I've got a whole number on the other side. Is there any way for me to get rid of the radical sign altogether? Square both sides, right? Square both sides. So that's going to give me 4x minus 4 equals what? 36. Now at this point, I'm just solving like a normal equation, right? What do? Add 4. I got 4x equals 40. X equals 10. Okay, x equals 10. Let's check that with some work. X equals 10. We're in good shape. Do we like those? Okay, so far so good. All right, let's look at question number 4. Okay. 4, a little bit different. X minus 3, radical there, plus radical x. Okay, that's going to keep us from being able to do maybe what we're used to. This is going to involve a little bit more work. Okay, so based upon the last equation looking similar to this, what would we do with this equation? Subtract what? Subtract radical x. Now notice, is radical x going to simplify out and add and do all those kind of neat things? No, so I'm going to end up with square root of x minus 3 equals what? 3 minus radical x. Okay? Now, I still want rid of that square root sign, so what am I going to do to both sides? Square both sides. Okay? Now, this is where people will make mistakes. All right? We know that this is going to be x minus 3 over here, but I can guarantee you I know what people are going to do, and they're going to do it wrong. All right? What most people do, I'm going to tell you what you're going to do wrong before you do it. You're going to write 9 plus x. No? 9 minus x. Okay? You'd still be wrong. You know why? What do I have to actually do with this? FOIL it. Okay? So I'm going to come over here. 3 minus radical x times 3 minus radical x. I don't get to just multiply, just square each term inside. I am taking this and I'm multiplying it by itself, which includes multiplying by radical x and the 3. So 3 times 3 is 9. And, I could fast forward through here, but I'm not going to. Then I would get negative 3 radical x, right? Minus 3 radical x plus x, right? Do we know how we got positive x? Okay. Negative 1 times negative 1 is positive 1. Radical x times radical x is positive x. All right, so this is giving me 9 minus 6 radical x plus x. Okay, so I'm going to bring that solution over here. 9 minus 6 radical x plus x. Okay, now I can begin to simplify and solve. Okay, anybody have their thoughts on what happens next? I want to make sure that I've got, let's see, I heard add 3. Okay. All right, so add 3. Add 3 to what? To 9. Okay, so you've got x equals 12 minus 6 radical x plus x. Subtract the x, like this one here. Okay, what's x minus x? 0. Okay, so I got nothing over here. All I have is 12 minus 6 radical x over here. I do still have a variable though, right? So let's move that. So we have 6 radical x equals 12. Okay, let me make a little bit more space here. Okay, divide by 6, he says. So I've got radical x equals what? 2? Square root, or not square root, but square. So I have x equals 4. Now, some of those, all of those steps are doable, but not all of those steps would you think to do. Okay? For instance, how many of you were lost the moment that our x's over here canceled out? Yeah? So you weren't aware that just because everything was over here on the right-hand side that I couldn't move one element over, right? And then solve the two sides. Okay, so does it help to see? Sometimes it's just, I didn't know I could do that. I didn't know that was allowed. It's allowed. Okay? There are rules. Just sometimes we make rules up that aren't there. All right, finally, number 5. Number 5. You guys want to try this one on your own? Yeah, you do. All right, let's hit pause on the video here. Do a little bit of editing shenanigans. Okay, let's go ahead and start to kind of work some of this out. What was your first step so far? Subtract radical x. Okay, so you got square root of x minus 9 equals negative 4 minus radical x, right? And then you squared both sides. Squared both sides. Okay, So you've got x minus 9 equals, and then you foiled it. Okay, so let's try that. We got negative 4 minus radical x times negative 4 minus radical x. Okay, negative 4 times negative 4 is 16. Okay, and then can I go ahead and simplify this to like negative 8 radical x? Did you get there? Because you should have had, oh, I'm sorry, positive, right? Positive, because negative 4 times negative radical x is going to be positive 4 radical x, and then you're going to do that again. All right, and then what? Plus x. Okay, so we got 16 plus 8 radical x plus x, so let's go ahead and put that over here. 16 plus 8 radical x plus x. All right, how many of us made it that far? Okay, several made it that far. If you didn't make it that far, okay. All right, are we getting caught up? Okay. All right, so what's next? Add 9. Okay, add 9 plus 9 there. Okay, what's going to happen to my x's? Are they going to cancel out the same way they did last time? Yeah. Okay. Boom. Boom, they cancel. Okay, so what should I wind up with on the left-hand side then? Well, let's go ahead and get the negative 8 radical x equals what? 25? Okay. All right, let's pull this down here a little bit. What are you going to do next? Divide by negative 8. All right, so you've got radical x equals, we can change that to negative 25 over 8, right? What's after that? Square it. Okay, and square it. 625 over what? 64. Okay, so you got 625 over 64 equals x. But here's the thing, is that if you check it, it's going to equal positive 4. Right? If you plug in 625 over 64 back into this, all right, because here's the problem. Square root plus a square root, can that end up in here as a negative number? So there is no solution. You can't come out with a negative because we have to square these things, right? And if you square a negative, you're always going to get a positive, right? So frustrating, I get that, okay? All that work only to find out this doesn't work, no solution. All right, but that should give you at least some indication, like, hey, if I see square root of something plus square root of something equals a negative number, I at least want to, at the very end, work it out and then check my answer, because there's a good chance that it's going to be no solution. All right, is there anybody in here that's not familiar with how 6, 7, and 8 would be solved using a matrix? So anybody that doesn't remember how to do that? Yeah, you're going to want to RREF when you get it all set up, right? Okay. Everybody remembers that? Yeah, kind of? All right. Well, if you get stuck with it, remember, I can show you some things. All right, we're going to hit stop right there, give you guys some time to work.